Hello and welcome back to the Faith and Culture Show. I'm Catherine Camp, your hostess for the show. And as you know, this is where we dig into those difficult topics of our day. And we do this to educate ourselves in order to be able to go out into the world, into our culture, and have conversations that count, conversations with an eternal perspective. And today is no different. This is one of the most difficult topics for most Christians to discuss with others. Even pastors avoid it like the plague. But today I'm bringing back Mr. Don Blake. He is the president and founder of the Virginia-Christian Alliance. He is quite a force out there, and he has a lot to say about the month of June that just finished up. We are recording this on July 1st, 2025. But I'm hoping that our conversation will begin to help those of you out there who really want to make a difference in our culture to get out there and begin saying something, doing something, changing the culture with more of a focus toward God, the Judeo-Christian God, not some generic God. So let's bring Don back on, and we're going to start with the month of June from 2025.
Hello,
Hi,
Catherine.
Don.
Nice to see your smiling face there.
Thank you. It's good to have you back. Thank you for being here. I know you have a lot to say, and it's, this is one of those topics not many people are going to tackle, and that's the deal of the month of June. Unfortunately, the militant organization called the LGBTQ plus whatever, they have taken it over like they have tried to do everything else and make it into a month to celebrate sexual diversity, things that we know are harmful to people. And they're not just promoting it to grown-ups anymore, but they're really pushing it and this whole agenda onto our children. Now, I know that our current president, President Donald J. Trump, said we're not going to recognize this month, but many places in their defiant state, just like Satan does, still promoted it anyway. So where do you want to begin?
Well, let me first of all, tell a story here that maybe will encourage people who may be watching today or tomorrow or sometime in the future. But the Bible says, Jesus says, we will be persecuted and you will stand alone. And a prophet is not a prophet in his own town or his own home. So it really takes a lot of courage to stand up in a group and speak out. And I've had lots of problems with pushbacks. And just last week, I had one a week ago today. And you just have to stand up. The Bible says in Revelation, I think 21 verse 9, that the worst thing you can be is a coward. It's worse than a fornicator or a liar or a stealer. It's to be a coward. But it's hard to stand up when you know you're in the lion's den and they don't want to hear what you have to say. And I'll go back just to last Tuesday night, a week ago tonight. I went to the Henrico County. I live in Virginia. Henrico County is where our office is, where I live, and spoke to the Board of Supervisors meeting about the public libraries in Henrico County. We have probably a dozen $30+ million libraries. They have all the technology. They have beautiful facilities, and they have lots of books and computers and kids and all kinds of stuff in there. But people are not paying attention to what's in these libraries. And over the last 3 years, at least 3 years now, they have been having Pride Month for the whole month of June. And so I went to several of the libraries and I photographed the Pride exhibits in both the adult sections and in the children's sections. And you can't miss them when you walk in the libraries.
Did you send me pictures of those for me to pull up?
I did, yes, if you want to pull them up.
Okay, well, keep talking and I'll pull it up as soon as I find them.
So I'm printed out about 20 pages of books and photographs from just 3 different libraries. It was interesting that one library I went into had nothing. I could find nothing in there. So I figured, okay, it must be up to the discretion of the individual librarian of that library, because I could not find, out of 4, only 3 had them. But those 3 had bad ones, bad displays, big displays, and even in the children's departments. So I printed out about a 20-page packet, and I waited my time to go up and speak at public comments. They were not happy about my being up there. I mean, I know all the supervisors. I know the county manager very well. They all know me, and I'm sure they're saying, what is Blake doing here tonight? And I don't go there very often, but I've been appointed to a lot of committees through the county and through the years, and so they all know me. I know all them, and I know. And there are 2 pastors on that board. 2 pastors. They're both black pastors, 4 Democrats and 1 Republican, and I'll say a weak Republican at that. And so they just say, I can read their minds. What is he doing here? And what's he going to say? So I go up there and I start talking about Pride Month at the libraries, and if a taxpayers really knew what they were paying for, they would not approve this, and that it was wrong, and that I was going to give them. I started reading the titles of the books. I didn't want to hear that. Just didn't want to hear it. So I had a package for each one of them, plus the sheriff, who's a Democrat, plus the clerk, who's a Democrat. And I'd say I use these Democrats and Republicans because there are philosophies that are associated with the Democratic Party that are not associated with the Republican Party. And the Pride movement is a issue with the Democratic Party. They promote it and they like it. So I went up there to give to the supervisors and to the sheriff and to the clerk. And one of the supervisors, a pastor, said, you can save mine. I don't want it. I'm proud about libraries. This is a pastor of a large church. I have visited his church twice. I make a point to go to people's churches to see what they're preaching about. At least they know that I care enough to go into their church. Since I visited his church twice, the first time he recognized me. I mean, he couldn't help me. Help notice me there in the church. And then the second time I went, he never even bothered to acknowledge I was there. But I went to see another pastor that I knew, a black pastor that I knew I liked. I wanted to hear him speak or preach that day. But so there's a hostile atmosphere when you go into these things, and it makes you feel, okay, I don't want to do this. And the devil says, no, you don't need to do this. Blah blah blah. They're gonna not like you. And the reception was not good at all. Not good at all. And then after I spoke, a woman in the audience actually got up and spoke. And I have friends and relatives that are gay in the gay community, and I think it's really nice that we're recognizing this in the public libraries. So that was it. And I left. But it takes courage to do that. Now on Thursday afternoon.
Don, can I stop you right there just for a second? Because a lot of people, I think everybody knows somebody at this point, because they've been pushing so hard for 50 years and they've made it mainstream. Of course, everybody knows somebody. They have some relative. In scripture, it says, it really cautions people that not only go along with what's happening in the culture, and they know what is going on is wrong. It's opposed to God, but they celebrate it. Now, this is exactly what we're dealing with. And of course, that's not an argument. When somebody stands up and says, well, I have a friend and I think it's great. It's like, okay, if your friend is doing drugs, do you think that's okay too? It is a very dangerous lifestyle. And it pulls people away from God. And that's my biggest beef about it. But grown-ups can do what grown-ups want to do. That's fine. No one's going to force anyone to God. So I just sorry, I had to interject there.
That's okay. This goes back a long ways for me, and every time I've had to speak out on issues that I know are controversial or that people don't want to hear, it always brings anxiety in me, and I get nervous. Okay, because I know I'm the only person in there willing to stand up and speak, and there might be other people who agree, but they won't stand up. And so the problem is that we don't speak power, speak truth to power. So on Thursday of last week, they had the public library committee meeting. And so I went to the committee meeting and I took two black pastor friends of mine with me. And so we go there and they say, "What are you doing here?" And they didn't know me at all. I think I think the chairman knew who I was. But anyway, "What are you doing here?" And because we never have any visitors, and we don't have public comment time. So, there's nothing on the agenda for you to be able to speak about. And that was a concern, because why would you have a public meeting if the public can't come to the meeting? But the woman said, "We've never had a visitor." I don't know how long she's been chairman, probably for the last 3 or 4 years. But obviously the librarian staff, they've been there for a long time. They know what's going on. And so that's two pastors, Steve Parson and Craig Johnson. They went with me, and but they did allow us to speak. And so we were very measured in what we had to say. And they spoke from a pastoral standpoint. I spoke from a citizen, taxpayer, concerned, person. We did say, they said they're pastors, and I'm Virginia Christian Alliance, and so they just sat there. It was all women. It was 4 women on the board, and about 6 members of the library staff, overall library staff, and that particular library staff there. So they're all women, and I thought, well, this is, there's no men here at all. There were no men to kind of bring some order to something. So they just all sit there, and no one they didn't make any responses unless I asked a direct question. But we will measure what we said. We were kind, and obviously pastor type people are nice people. And they thanked us for coming and dismissed us, which was fine, because we didn't need to be there for the meeting. But the point is, I felt more comfortable knowing I had 2 people with me who could speak with compassion and truth, and it was a backup. Now I would have gone by myself. It wasn't as bad as going into a meeting room with the whole 200 people, and you got an adverse situation facing you, then you got to talk about. But this goes back to me. It goes back to 1992 when I was a publisher of a local Christian newspaper, and I remember the first article that printed in that paper about homosexuality was James Dobson. Now imagine how mild an article that would have been in 1992 by Dr. James Dobson. He was just saying, look, we're going to have problems here. We got to pay attention to this stuff. Well, look how far we've gone. Yeah. And people have been warning a country and churches and pastors about this at least since 1992, because I published the paper about it. Yeah. And so here we are today, and it's a big deal. Now, the governor of Virginia on Saturday night hosted in the governor's mansion. This is the oldest governor's mansion in America that's been in continual use since it was built. So it's the longest one, and the governor lives there, and it's right on Capitol Square. I met the man. I've talked to him in person by myself, one-on-one, for the first time I met him for 45 minutes or so. And so he knows where I stand on a lot of things, which he doesn't like where I stand on a lot of things. But he hosted on Saturday night the LGBTQ committee member meeting in the governor's mansion. There's pictures of he and his wife. There's pictures of 2 men together. There's pictures of 2 men holding a baby. I mean, they've got their own baby. 2 men can't have a baby, so they've got a newborn baby, or 6-month-old baby in their arms. And all this stuff is in the governor's mansion, who is a self-proclaimed, he prays. I mean, he prays at meetings and all of his cabinet meetings. They say he prays at all of his cabinet meetings. And yet he brings this in. There's a LGBTQ committee is established by one of the governors, prior governors, and I guess the General Assembly. And they meet and talk about these issues. And these people are not wholesome, all-American people. These people, they have real moral issues, and they have children. We have all kinds of problems with it. So this has been going on for quite a while. I guess McCullough was three governors ago, so 12 years ago, probably started this committee. So it's being pushed out even by a governor that's recognizing. And he had at that event the current Republican candidate for lieutenant governor. And there are photos of the candidate being there on the candidate's website. But he doesn't mention that it's a LGBTQ log cabin Republican event at the governor's mansion. So even though he is a practicing homosexual, I mean, he wants to marry the guy he's living with for the last 7 years, and he's running for lieutenant governor of Virginia. So this is how far it's gone. Mm-hmm. It's that even the Republicans have a homosexual, active homosexual, unrepentant homosexual who claims to be a Christian.
Well, now, I think people can be conservative and live any way they want, but when you step into the arena of proclaiming to be Christian, that's a whole different story. If you're going to be out in the public eye, there's a problem there. If you're living in a lifestyle that is opposed to the God of the Bible.
And you're asking people to vote for you and endorse you and give you money, so that, it just people are not thinking that a lot of people have come behind this guy who I have known since he was a kid, probably 9 years old. I mean, I literally have known him, been in my office many times. Never attacked him on his lifestyle if we were working on the issue together. But it's a lifestyle choice, and people who should not be promoting this in public life. They shouldn't be promoting it in our libraries. They shouldn't be promoting it on television and movies, but it's everywhere. And even, in their library, they have these cards that are recommended reading, LGBTQIA+, recommended reading for science fiction, literary, horror, romance, mystery, graphic novels, memoirs, cookbooks, poetry, history, political. It's just amazing that these are in there to put in their recommended reading books. So our government is endorsing this and saying, read these books. They don't have a library card, a bookmarker like this that says founding fathers, recommending reading on the founding fathers, or recommending reading on Christian from Christian writers or whatever. They have this. So where does it come from, Catherine? And so I was reminded that the leader of the American Library Association, because things come from top down. All of these libraries belong to associations, and school boards belong to school board associations, and teachers belong to teachers associations. So the top down of the American Library Association, the person who was the president of that, 2023 and 2024, there's somebody else now, 2025 and 26, I guess, 2-year term probably. That person is a self-avowed Marxist and lesbian. She wrote about it. I printed it off.
And she's the head of the Library Association?
Head of in 2023 and 2024. But when did these things start happening, at least in our county? 2023, 2024, and then 2025. They're having these things in our libraries. And so who picks this person? Who chooses a lesbian Marxist to run the American Library Association? You see, it's bigger than us. But nobody knows this. I mean, whoever's watching this is now going to know. Just Google the person. Google the Marxist librarian, former head of the Library Association. Anyway,
is that a national position?
Yeah, it's a national position. The whole American Library Association. I mean, it's a big deal.
Aren't they placed there by whoever is in charge of the libraries across the nation?
Well, they would vote. So you pay dues like you would to a club or the Republican Party. You pay your dues and you're a member, and then you get to vote on who is going to be representing you to go to these national meetings, just like churches have meetings. They have church meetings, and they go to local, like Virginia meetings, and then they go on to the national meetings. They vote the people to go in. So the leaders of the local, they would vote them up the line, and somebody becomes president of the national, just like the National Republican Party or Democratic Party or National Baptist Associations or something. So that's the way.
That's where the problem is. The problem is, I don't care what people do behind closed doors. That's their business. That's between them and God. And I really don't. If they do their job, they do their job. I really don't care about anything else. The problem happens when their values seep into, their distorted values, I should add, seep into the culture. And in this case, through the library where children have access to those books, it's like letting them into a pornography store. We both know Ann Tatis, and she showed me on camera the pictures that come from 2 books that are distributed in every public school library. And they are so graphic and disgusting. I had to blur out every picture because it's too disturbing. So, I understand it's not that, what I'm trying to say is to the audience, people watching, it's not homophobic. It's not anything like that. It's, hey, do what you want. But when you're in a position of power, stay within those bounds. The problem is when people start pushing their ideals and their perspective on others. So a Christian could just as well be nominated for that position, and somebody who cares about the Constitution of the United States of America and believes in the Judeo-Christian God and has respect for this country and is not trying to turn it into a Marxist country or communist, which we know that is the case with many of these movements right now, the liberal movements. They're very radical. But if there was a Christian in that position, how would people like it if that person started flooding the libraries with how to be, a theocracy, and let's look at that, and you have to be a Christian, and you must, and it just, they would hate it. There would be such a pushback. So that's what I see wrong, is have education.
Well, it is wrong, but it always, and I told these ladies the other day at that meeting, in the library board meeting, that where does the buck stop? Who authorized the display? Who authorized the purchase of those books to put on display and have in the library? No one will respond to that. Now, I know that it comes down from top. The American Library Association says we're recommending that you do these programs throughout the country, which obviously they're doing. But then the individual that runs, we have, I'm sure it's over $200 million worth of facilities that are open to the public for libraries in that county. At least that, probably $300 million worth of fine facilities. And so somebody has to order those books, pay for those books, and put them on the shelves. So who does it? So what they're doing, they're looking and get, these are recommended books to have in your library for Pride Month, and so they just order the books, and then they setting up on displays, and so they wouldn't answer. They wouldn't say who was, but somebody was. Remember, Harry Truman had it on his desk. The buck stops here. And I said that. I said, Harry Truman, the president, had on buck stop. Where does the buck stop in the library system? Who makes these decisions? They wouldn't say who makes the decision. But I'm sure that woman was sitting next to the chairman, because generally in meetings like that, you have the head person sitting next to the chairman to answer questions and whatever, hand them paperwork and what. And I'm sure that woman was the head person of the whole library system. Is what I believe. Now, and probably on the other side was the person head of that particular library. So nobody wanted to answer, but they're not accountable. So who are they accountable to? They're accountable to the people that appoint them. The 5 supervisors we have in Henrico County each have an opportunity to appoint somebody to that board. They generally pick out people that are like-minded with them.
Mm-hmm.
That can be manipulated and say, this is what we want to do, and why way. And they pick out a lot of times weak people who may personally be opposed to gay pride, pride, whatever, homosexuality. And I too don't mind. You can do anything you want to. You can smoke pot, drink, and get alcohol. You can be anything you want to, do drugs and sex. But you don't take that out of your home. You don't take it into the workplace, and you don't take it into the public arena. And this has come into the public arena to the point where the governor, 3 years in a row, has had the log cabin Republicans, actually it was a committee. It's on Facebook. It's the whole committee. So it's come to his home, and that's endorsing. It's endorsing those people's lifestyles, and saying holding the governor's wife is holding the baby. This is bad stuff, and it's on Facebook. The pictures are all there. People post things on Facebook. So what do we do as individuals? We first have to go and find these things. I don't just go around looking for these libraries. I go into the library, because I do go into libraries and look things up and see this. And so that says, wow, how many other libraries in a county have it? Hanover County's got one too. I went to Hanover Library recently. I think I went there. They were just playing that. That's the next county over. That's a very conservative county too. So, what do we do about it? Well, we have to be bold enough to go and stand up and tell those people who are a power of authority to vote, and the county manager. I'm sure this bothers the county manager of Henrico County. I just know him. I've known him a long time. I know this bothers him, but his job is to do what these 5 members of the board tell him what to do. and he could cut the budget and say we're not going to fund the libraries anymore. He'd get fired on that. But who hires the chief librarian? Somebody in the county public personnel department hires these people. So it all starts at the top, and people at the top who are weak or don't have the authority are not making change. Now we do have a president in there now who is making a change on a lot of things, and he would not recognize Pride Month, which a lot of people are really upset. The president didn't recognize it, blah blah blah, and so they're chastising him about that. But it has nothing to do. But Easter gets one day, and you don't. I'm not even sure you get Easter Monday off. I'm not sure it's always on a Sunday. I'm not sure they get Easter Monday off. Maybe you do. I don't know. Christmas gets one day. Nobody gets a whole month. Presidents, George Washington's birthday, that gets one day. But then it's all presidents. Only mention George Washington. It's never been legally changed, lawfully changed. So we don't recognize a whole month of George Washington, the founding fathers. And I brought that up at the meeting. I said, you don't have Founding Fathers Month. Oh, Mr. Blake, we have Asian Month, we have Hispanic Month, we have Black History Month, we have all these other months. Well, what about Americans? What about our founding fathers? But what if they have an agenda, and the agenda is to take God out of everything, break down the family, and divide people into tribes. I call them tribes. And so you're in the Asian tribe, and I'm in this tribe, and we're in the Black tribe, or the Hispanic tribe, whatever it is. They want to put people into tribes, and they can control them better. This all has to do with the Marxist theory. So it's been going on a long time. They wrote books about this back in the 90s.
Oh, they wrote books about this, about intersectionality, way back in the 30s and 40s. There was much more awareness of Marxist tactics than there are today. And I think that is by design. Unless you've gone to school at like a university in Chicago or Columbia University, where there are definite classes on how to be a Marxist. In fact, wasn't it Columbia that the women who started Black Lives Matter, didn't they go there? And they were all avowed Marxists.
Yeah, they were. At least two of the three, all three of them were avowed Marxists. I think one of them might be a lesbian, or two of them might be lesbians.
Yeah, they could care less about the color of anyone's skin. They just pocketed the money, bought big houses all over, and just walked away from it all. And so, especially after they were found out.
Yeah.
But Dawn is right, everyone. It's not like, oh man, this guy's off his rocker. No, this is an agenda. And it was started a long, long time ago, over 100 years ago, to begin to divide and conquer. And that's, the Bible even talks about that. A house divided cannot stand. And the enemy knows that.
Yeah.
We're all vessels, and we can either be a vessel for God to work here, like He's asked us to do, or we become a vessel for the enemy, which is Satan and the demons, because that's just what we are. We're created to be a vessel for one or the other, and that's why God always said, "Choose life." In Deuteronomy, choose life. And that's with God, because the other side, there's certain death. So, Don, what does this tell you about our culture?
Well,
where are we?
Our culture is in decline. And why is it in decline? It's been in decline now for decades, but it's the fault of the Christian church. The church has not spoken up about this. And I remember when the marriage amendment, well, not the marriage amendment, but when the Supreme Court 10 years ago said men can marry men, women can marry women, they said it's constitutional, and that these laws banning that were unconstitutional. And I remember the pastor in the church I've been a member of for like 8 years, and came out to stood before the congregation and said, "I want to apologize because I've never discussed this and talked about this in all my years of being a pastor, and now where are we?" And he mentioned it that one Sunday and never mentioned it again, because it's gotten worse. That was 15 years ago. Well, it was 10 years ago. It was 10 years ago they actually did the Obergefell decision. And so it was 10 years ago that he said it. And I actually left the church and shortly thereafter and joined another church. But they would talk about these things. But the pastors, they know it's wrong. The transgender stuff. I went to Hanover County school board meeting. It's been about 8 years ago on this transgender issue, and spoke to the school board. And I had 6 minutes. I was dressed in a suit and I had a prepared speech. And so if you represented an organization, you got 6 minutes. If you're just an individual, you only got 3 minutes. Well, the pastor of that church that I was just mentioning, he came as a civilian, gave his home address, never mentioned that he was a pastor of a 500-member church, never just said his address, and he got 3 minutes, and he really didn't say a whole lot why it was up there. But he could have had 6 minutes, and he could have worn a clerical robe or at least a suit and said, "I'm a pastor, and what you're doing with these kids up here as transgenders is wrong." I gave the copy to each one of the supervisors and the superintendent of schools and to the 2 media representatives there. I get in the newspaper with what I said. They quote right directly from what my written statement was, and he never gets mentioned. So it really takes boldness to say who you are, and why I'm here, and what you're doing is wrong. But it has to be a prepared message, so that people don't ramble on and they lose all their time. This goes back, Catherine, to in the 90s, they started writing books about how to take over. The homosexual community started writing books and saying, "This is what we're going to do to take over America." And I have some of those books. And Gleason had and I have the original copy of 2001, 2, and 3 of their workbook of how to take over your local government, how to take over your school system. You would think a government organization, agency had published this out, of how to take over it step by step, of go to meetings and then write letters to the editor and make friends with politicians and so forth. And they've taken over the General Assembly. They've taken over at school boards. They've taken over everything, and the public has allowed it to happen. But we go back to the founding fathers. Where did the founding fathers learn about liberty and freedom and self-responsibility? They learned it from the pulpit. And so it was the church pastors back in the days of the founding of our country that told people from the pulpit, this is what England is doing to us. You're losing your freedoms. This is what the Bible says, and our Constitution is built on the Bible, and et cetera, et cetera. And so that's how they knew. And many of those people, the original signers of the declarations, had theological degrees or were pastors or they knew the Bible. And we don't know the Bible anymore, and we elect people that don't know it. I want to go back to there's an article that came out in Salon magazine just June the 21st. So it's only been a week. And the article says, fear of gay blood and confused minds, Virginia Republican touts support from anti-gay preachers. Now, this is an article written to defame Lieutenant Governor Sears, who is running to be governor in the Commonwealth of Virginia. It says Lieutenant Governor Winsome Earl Sears is hoping an anti-LGBTQ plus clergy can help her become Virginia's first female governor. And this article actually quotes me from 2013. So they went back to my personal Facebook page and all the way back to, they quoted from 2016, 2025, and all the way back to 2000. There's one in 2015, and 2022, and 2013. So they quoted me in what I posted about homosexuality all the way back to 2013. And they used that, and then a black pastor who's on my board, they quoted him for a couple of years, and then they quoted two pastors who have endorsed Winsome Sears, and so we all have endorsed Winsome, and we all know her obviously, but they go back and find what you said in my case 12 years ago, and say this is what this man said. He's a bad person to say this, and it's just really they will come after you. 13 years later, they will come after you. So you have to have really thick skin and be bold enough to know. In fact, what I said at the county meeting the other night, that is on video. You can go on and find the video and listen to it. I've listened to myself and what did I say? I mean, I prepared anyway, but and then what did the pastor say? I don't want that paperwork you're going to give me. You keep that. And so there's records out there that go back and they'll find these things, and people have to worry about that. I mean, they shouldn't worry about it. You shouldn't worry about repercussions. You say what is true, and God takes care of the rest of it. That's what it is. So we have to speak out and say what we know is true, and say, Lord, I've done all I can do. What are you going to do? Because I stood there, but He has to use us. He's not coming down into the school board room or into the county supervisor's meeting place and speaking. If He did, they'd all be dead. No, He's saying, I chose you, and you better go do it.
Yeah.
And so,
and He'll speak through us.
Yes.
And when what happens is we are portrayed, when you speak up like what you did, you're portrayed as being malicious and vindictive, but you're not. You're walking in, you're speaking truth, and that's it. But they will turn it around. They will project onto you their own behavior. That is a tactic. This is a psychological war. And I was just sitting here listening to you, thinking, well, if they want to play that way, then I hope the people working for Winsome Sears will go and find what the people stand for that are up against her. I know that in Virginia, the other person on the Democrat side uh, Abigail Spanberger worked for the CIA, and I believe once CIA, always CIA. And she's backed by Marxist communist George Soros. So, okay, let's go back and take a look at that person's history. And so you want a Marxist country, you want a Marxist state, then vote for that person, because you're going to get everything we had to live through from 2021 to 2025, January 20th at noon. That's what we're going to get. Okay, if we start voting for people. And I think that are working for the globalists and backed by people who hate America. So I honestly believe, I hope whoever is working for her goes back and starts digging up things that the other person said at some point.
Well, they will. She's already got ads coming out that are pointing these things out. But the American public is not. Many people are not even reading newspapers anymore. They're only looking at the cell phone to get their news and see what their friends are saying. And so we're the dumbest people this generation America's ever had.
It's true.
Dumb down from each generation. So my kids are more dumb than I am, and my grandkids are more dumb than their parents are. And so because they don't know, but they don't read anything. They don't buy books and read books anymore. They just don't. I mean, if they can't get it on their phone, then they don't know about it. And of course, peer pressure. But if it's being taught in the schools and being indoctrinated in schools that transgenders, 10 years ago, the word didn't hardly exist. I mean, what was a transgender? Nobody was getting body parts cut off and taking pills. But now in the Generation Z, we have 1 out of 5 are self-identifying in some manner of LGBTQ or non-binary. 1 out of 5, and 3 of those out of 5 are women, are young girls. So,
and that should tell you something. That's not normal. That is the product of a psychological war, and the war has been taken to the children. They are vulnerable. They are easily persuaded because we all want to be liked. And until we forget about all that and seek God's acceptance and not the acceptance of man and praise from man, we are going to fall into the traps that the devil sets. And I know that sounds so weird, but there is a metaphysical realm. Trust me. And the enemy wants to kill, steal, and destroy. He will steal your life from you.
He will attack people too who are standing up, who are standing against him. The people who think they're doing the right thing, they think they're doing the right thing. I mean, you can't tell me that all these people who are pushing this down from, say, the Library Association all the way down from the governor's office, they think that they're doing the right thing because they're afflicted. They have they're demonized and they're being used. And so they really believe this. But God says, I will give them confused minds. Those who turn from me, I will give them confused minds. And they are. In fact, that's one of the things I said in this article that they quoted me on was these people are confused, and some of them are really confused. This has to do with the transgender men who think they're women and vice versa. But see, our news media picks up on this stuff, and they call a man who's dressing as a woman, she. They threw out the article and say she and her and whatever, and it's a man. I mean, so they're validating. So when in fact, the guy who's running for lieutenant governor here, who I have known since he was like 8 years old, and his parents, his dad was one of my best friends. So I'm not mad at him. It's just something, whatever happened in college, he changed his lifestyle. So, but he goes to a church, an Episcopal church, and the vicar in that church is married to another man. So he goes.
I was going to say that explains everything.
He's always been to Episcopalian. His parents they went to my church, but when he went off to college, they came back different. But the man who is the head priest, the vicar, married another man in the month of May. And that was on their website. It was on the church website that he was marrying. Will was marrying William. And there it is right there. They are so proud of this. And so you talk about confusion. The Episcopal Church has been dead since 92 for sure.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, no, I think it's even earlier, because I read a study from 1993 that when the study was finished and published, only or less than 2% of Episcopalian priests, or whatever you want to call them, believed in the inerrancy of Scripture. Less than 2%.
Well, I believe it, because in 1992, the reason I use that year is because that's when they appointed Bishop Robinson to be the first homosexual bishop in the denomination.
Yeah.
And then the following year, that was in like New Hampshire, I think. Now he's divorced now, but he died. So that was all came in the paper when he died. He and his quote husband, they got married. He was a bishop. I mean, who does this kind of stuff? Anyway, so they divorced after a few years, and he died as a single man. But then a couple of years later, I think maybe the next year in California, they appointed a lesbian as a bishop. Look at the Jewish community. Now, the Reformed Jews are the most liberal of the Jewish community. And I have lots of Jewish friends, and I mean close friends. We think alike.
Yeah, you do.
And but the Reformed is very liberal.
Mm-hmm.
A few years ago, there was a woman rabbi who was the head of the Reform movement in America. Now, biblically, women shouldn't be rabbis, and they shouldn't, from a biblical standpoint, they shouldn't be priests or pastors, lead pastors. There's certain jobs that are for men, certain for women, from a biblical standpoint. And she was appointed to be head of the Reformed Jewish community in America. She was a lesbian, married to another woman, and had children. And so, if people find this acceptable, what kind of people find? They just don't care. They just don't. It's like we've lost all morality, and the Jewish people, of all people, should believe in Leviticus, right? They don't want to, if they don't, they don't like the New Testament, on the Messianics too, but if they don't believe that Christ came to save us and he was the Messiah, all right, we'll just look at the book of Leviticus, and it says homosexuality is an abomination. That's what it says. And so how do you endorse something like this? How do you find this acceptable? So society has accepted, the Jewish people have accepted, and the Christian people have accepted, the Lutherans have split, the Methodists have split. I mean, we've got all kinds of problems. The Presbyterians, they're all, we believe in the Bible, not believe in the Bible. Obviously, a lot of Jewish people don't believe in any of the Bible, or the holidays and all. They like all that. And then you've got Christians that don't, they only go to church Easter and Christmas. A lot of them, we're Christians, but yet they don't practice in their lives. And they go to churches. They call themselves Christian. They go to churches that accept their lifestyle. And they let them be in the choir, let them be leaders in the church and everything else. And you just can't do that. But if the Lord's coming back, I mean, we're getting pretty close to a time where there's a pretty good time to come back, Jesus, and take charge, because Trump has got at least 2 men in his cabinet that are married and have children. And here's how bad it is, Catherine. This past weekend, I was at the Faith and Freedom Coalition event in Washington, D.C. It was a wonderful event. It was great speakers. It was really good. There were like 700 Christian people there. And it was just a great event.
Wow.
Ralph Reed sat on stage with Secretary Treasurer Bissett and interviewed him. Here's a man who's married to another man in the Trump administration. He's Secretary of Treasury. Why do we even have to know that? But why did they bring him and give him an audience that is being live streamed to Lord knows how many people? And this program had to cost millions of dollars to put on, to bring all these people and speakers in and everything. And it just had to cost a lot of money. But even our Christian leaders, I mean, I said, wasn't there another cabinet member that could bring in besides this one, who's married to another man? And then Grinnell says that he is a Christian and that God made him this way. And that's this way he said. So there's 2 prominent people in the Trump administration.
Yeah.
And Trump had people down there in Mar-a-Lago. He had the log cabin Republicans down there.
Yeah.
So,
You know, if you can do your job and you're good at it, because, you know, you can be creative and you can have your personal life a complete disaster. But your professional life, you're doing really well. I don't think people need to know. The whole point of this, Don, that has been a progressive attack through psychological warfare. I know I keep saying that, but there is a book out there, and I think I talked to you about it one time, and you may even have it because I know you have your own library. It's called After the Ball.
I got that. 1990, yeah.
Yeah, and it is written by two gentlemen who profess to be homosexual, and they were fed up with everyone rejecting their lifestyle. And this was back in the 70s. And then they were top executives, right, of marketing and advertising. They both had PhDs, one from Harvard, the other from Princeton. Their last names were Kirk and Madsen. Now what happened there was they put together a planned psychological attack on Americans. And they had war room meetings with politicians, with the news industry, you know, the mainstream propaganda news media. And they, pretty soon, movies, filmmakers, they literally had meetings, war room meetings, they call it in their book. And they were determined through psychological warfare, which means first they flood the market with their agenda. And it's like in your face. If people remember it, if you're going to change a culture's morals, you have to approach it first is make it funny. You make it fun of Will and Grace. It was one of those first shows where, you know, they get you with comedy. And so you get used to seeing that over and over and over again. Then it's kind of like, okay, whatever. It's funny though, you know, people make an excuse. Well, it's funny, you know, it's like, it's entertainment. That's how the enemy gets into our thinking. He uses tactics that begin to affect how you view things because it goes right to the emotional part of your brain. Back in some people call it the reptilian complex. It's the backside where your emotions are. And then the next stage that they use is that they call jamming. That means they completely, first they desensitize everybody, and then the people who don't want to go along become ostracized. It's like, oh, you know, that's where the names come from. Oh, you're bigoted. Oh, you're a homophobe. Oh, you're this. Oh, you're that. And they make you feel badly. It's like a lot of Christians totally caved at that point because it was like, oh, no, you know, Jesus loves everybody. And yes, he died for everybody. And then it was free grace. And oh, it's okay. My faith says gay is okay. I saw all kinds of bumper stickers. Well, that is called jamming. They totally stop your life and kind of start to ostracize you. They did the same thing during the C-19 years, just the past, 5 years, 2020 or 2019 up until,
right.
Yeah, with that. And, you know, they did play, it's the same playbook over and over again. And then after that, they completely convert everyone because they're flooding the market with all kinds of media. The books that you showed, they started out with little kids, of course, college students are really vulnerable because they want to be liked. They're at that weird, awkward stage where I want to be liked, I'm free, and and they turned the kids against their parents, against the family, Marxist tactic. And And so it worked. It was successful. Instead of being marginalized, now they are mainstream. And so if you dare talk about it now, like you said, it's difficult. And I don't mean to talk so much, but I'm not surprised at all. I saw this coming. I wrote to several big pastors in 2005, and I got one response from Charles Swindoll. And it was such a milquetoast, lukewarm response. I was so discouraged because I really looked up to the pastors I wrote to. And I thought, that is so non-committal. And what are you going to do when someone walks into your church and asks you to marry them? Are you ready? Do you have bylaws to protect yourself so that they don't sue the pants off of you? Because that's what these people do. They're militant, they're evil, they're loud, they're pushy. They are out for blood. And Christians should be able to approach this in a way that is more logical and using critical thinking, because we're fighting against the enemy big time.
I know you're getting close here to your time. I would say this to anyone who watches this. You have to step up and you have to be bold. Be bold enough. Step out of your comfort level. Speak up in your church. Ask your pastor to speak up about these issues. Speak up. Speak up in public meetings. Oftentimes you will find at a public meeting that people agree. They'll clap and they say, yeah, you're saying the right thing, but they're too cowardly to stand up and speak themselves. But you stand up and speak for them. And you try to encourage people in your church to be talking about this, because we could change this if we stood up and talked in our churches and told the truth. But we've got lots of problems with the churches, and we have problems with elected officials. Mentioned a bunch of them today, governors and presidents, and that are just letting this stuff go by. So my message to anyone listening: speak up, and be able to quote scripture. Jesus he wants to love everybody, but not everybody's God's child. You're only God's child if you're in the family.
Mm-hmm.
And he said in scripture, get behind me, Satan. Your father's the devil. Didn't he say that to the Pharisees? Your father is the devil.
Yeah, he did.
Yeah, so Catherine, thanks for having me on. And anybody listening, thank you for putting up with us, because it's a difficult subject to talk about. So
it is, but if you really care about somebody and you want them to walk, towards Jesus, you don't have to convert anybody. You just start pointing them in the right direction. It's an unhealthy lifestyle that leads to unhealthy outcomes. So, it's like dealing with a drug addict. You gently you ask God how to handle it. Every situation's different. Yeah. So, Don, how do people find your organization so they can read up? Maybe they can subscribe to a newsletter. How do they find you?
Well, go on the internet, vachristian.org, vachristian.org, and you can subscribe really easily. Just click on subscribe. We have great newsletters that come out weekly. Sometimes it'll be one article, sometimes it'll be 2 or 3, and they're all contemporary issues. So they're modern. It's not like when we started 16 years ago, we did a lot of things on creation and things were just different. But now it's so rapid, it's all in your face. And so we have writers. We don't pay anybody. We're all volunteers. Every person that works for us is a volunteer. We have no paid staff. And the writers write. They send us these articles, and some people will write a whole book basically from. In fact, we did have the book on Islam was written from all the articles the guy wrote. He wrote a whole book. And so but I would encourage you, go on vachristian.org, and I will put another plug in. Go on firstlanding1607.com, firstlanding1607.com, and see what's on there. Because the President of the United States, just in April the 29th, he did a declaration, a presidential proclamation recognizing the first landing, the first cross planted in Virginia soil in 1607. It's a president saying, and so there's 2 websites, vachristian.org and firstlanding1607.com. Check those out. You'll learn about Virginia history. You'll learn a lot of stuff. Thank you for listening. Thank you for having me, Catherine.
Thank you, Don.